Hello, my name is Mark Gibson, and you're listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, a weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Hello and good morning, and you're very welcome to today's Signpost webinar. We hope you're keeping safe and well wherever you're joining us from today. So today we're going to be talking about organic farming. Ireland's Climate Action Plan has set an ambitious target of 10% of our agricultural land to be farmed organically by 2030. And we're delighted to be joined by Senior Inspector within the Department of Agriculture, Jack Nolan, who is leading the organic section within the department. And Jack is going to give us an overview of how Ireland's organic strategy is going. And we're also joined by Elaine, Leavy, who's organic specialist within Teagasc. Good morning, Jack. You're coming from the sunny southeast. So Jack, you're going to be giving us an overview today of maybe where we're at with the overall strategy for organics in Ireland, and to touch on the supply chain side of things as well, which is important, obviously, for people that who have already converted or who are considering converting to organic farming. I mean, in general terms, how is it going?
It's been really positive, Mark. I suppose we started a couple of years ago with a new scheme in 2023, and things have changed dramatically since then with much more interest. But one of the biggest changes has been advisory support, like the increase in support from Teagasc and the ACA. And that makes an enormous difference, because the biggest thing with organics is often the fear of the unknown. You know, people don't understand or think there's a lot of rules and regulations. But the fact that there are advisors on the ground there, and there are a very large number of farm walks now, and organics is much more prevalent around the countryside than it ever has been in the past. And then you had the war in Ukraine, the high fertilizer prices. And just like you said there a minute ago, the weather has been so bad over the last winter. And people, I think, are looking for an alternative. And organics is an option. It's another system of farming that people are interested in. And what we always say is go to a farm walk, talk to an organic farmer and decide for yourself. Make an informed decision so that you know what you're deciding about, and come in with your eyes open.
Yeah. Well, I think that fertilizer, nitrogen side of things in particular, the targets that have been set at a national level through the Climate Action Plan also, all of those are guiding us towards a lower input type of farming, particularly on the pesticides and the fertilizer side of things. So it certainly is bringing more people into the net, or more people that are practically organic, and maybe it's just those last couple of steps that they need to make. So Jack, we'll hand over to you, and we'll talk to you after the presentation.
Thanks very much, Mark. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining today. So I'm going to talk about organic farming in Ireland. First thing I'd just like to point out is that the green leaf symbol down in the bottom right-hand corner there, and that's the EU organic logo. And if you see that, you're sure that the product you're buying is certified organic. And that's really important, because there are so many claims now. We were in France there lately. I think there's 40 or 50 different labels about pesticide reduced and good for this and good for that. With organic, there's a certification, an internationally recognized certification standard behind it. And that green leaf is really important. We've seen huge change in organics over the last couple of years because, like Mark said, we have ambitious targets. So we came from an area of about 1.6% when the programme for government was signed back in 2020. The target was to reach 7.5% by 2027. At the minute, we're at 5%. And our Climate Action Plan target is to reach 10% by 2030. So we're moving along a pace. I suppose one of the big drivers behind it is the farm to fork policy. So the Green Deal, when it was announced by the Commission, there was a lot of consultation around it. But the ambition is to increase the European area to 25%. So the organic area across Europe to 25% of the utilisable agricultural area. Now, obviously, for countries like Ireland, we're not going to achieve that. When the programme for government was signed, the average EU area was about 7.5%, and that's where the 7.5% came from. Average EU area is now 9.9%, so it's been growing since, but our area has grown too, up to the 5%. We also, obviously, like Mark said there, we have the Climate Action Plan with targets to reduce our fertiliser use, which have fallen greatly over the last year or two, due to the high prices, very high input prices, the war in Ukraine, we've had unbelievable weather for the last year, and we seem to be getting more and more weather events. I'm down here, severe weather events, so we don't get showers of rain now. We get half an inch or an inch of rain. And in the last week or two, cattle were put back into the sheds in Wexford in May, which is never, I'm not aware of it happening before anyway. So all these things are feeding into it. Farmers are, the rewards to farmers aren't there. Like consumers aren't paying enough for food. Food isn't valued enough. We throw out a third of our food every year. If we valued it more, we wouldn't do that. We have problems with the type of food we're eating. So an awful lot of ultra high processed food with high salt, high sugars in it. About 50% of the adults across Europe are obese. So there isn't a fair distribution there. So there's a lot of signals coming to consumers, but we really need consumers to take on board and wonder about what are they doing to their bodies, what are they doing to their brain, what are they eating. There's a small premium attached to organic. It's well worth it. But no matter what type of food you buy, the ultimate aim is to get a fair reward back to farmers. We also have the Organic Capital Investment Scheme, which gives a 60% grant, for example, to buy equipment. So, say things like mowers or disc harrows, equipment for tillage, grass equipment. When you come into organics, 50% of the layback area for cattle and sheep must be straw bedded. So, if you need to convert your housing, you'll get a 60% grant for it. We have the Organic Processing Investment Grant Scheme, and this is National Exchequer funded. The OCAS is part of TAMS, and that's co-funded by the EU, but the Organic Processing Scheme is funded by the National Exchequer, and that gives it gives grant aid to processors, organic processors, to invest in capacity, because what we want to make sure, we have a pipeline coming, and I'll get to it in a minute, the increase in stock and area and so on. We want to make sure that as much organic product as possible is sold at a premium price as organic. And earlier this year, this scheme opened. The grant rate for the last couple of years was 40%. And on average, the spend per year was about 400,000, say looking back from 18, 19, 20 up to this year. This year, the fund was 1.5 million. It was open in January, and we received enough applications to fully use the fund. So hopefully 1.5 million will be spent in processing facilities this year, which will increase the capacity. Earlier on this year, and I have a slide on it later on, announcement was made about green public procurement. Across Europe, they use this to source organic food. And it's always been something that's been there, that farmers have asked for and said, look, if you're trying to promote organic farming, why don't you use it as part of, say, a state canteen? So here in the department or in Teagasc or anywhere else where the department is buying food, like meals for school children, a percentage of it should be organic. In 2023, we had 4,000 farmers in the organic farming scheme. We had about 4,500 operators. So this means people selling the food or processing it or anything like that. They all have to be registered because, like I said earlier, there's a very stringent control, a quality control and adherence to regulations in organics. Last year, we had 175,000 hectares of land in organic. That's about 4% of the land area. And cattle was the predominant use of that land. So over half it, over 2,000, and sheep and poultry and so on. Now the scheme opened again there before Christmas, and we have a further 1,000 farmers converting this year, switching over to organic farming. So that means at the minute we have 5,000 organic farmers and 225,000 hectares, which is 5% of the country. And what I have on the next map here is the location of these around the country. So from the start, it's been mainly taken up or mostly taken up by farmers in the West. Like you said earlier, Mark, a lot of farmers that may have been close to organic already have come in. So we've seen tremendous growth there, and really it's about 2/3, say, to the west and 1/3 to the east. We really need more farmers come in the east of the country for a number of reasons. I suppose historically across all farming systems, stock have moved from the west to the east to be finished. That's true in organics too. And we also need more tillage. We need more native grain produced. Now, this is true for conventional as well as organic, but at the moment, for the coming winter, we're going to import about 30,000 tonnes of meal, of organic feed into Ireland. The department carried out a survey of organic farmers there over Christmas, and it showed that 50,000 tonnes of meal or concentrates will be fed next winter. So that can be straights like barley or oats. It can be combi crops like peas and barley. but also people are buying nuts that are coming in from abroad. And we want to produce as much of that as possible here. So there's a great opportunity for Irish tillage farmers here to switch into organic and meet this growing demand. What we will see this year, and there seems to be more interest in the eastern part of the country, but there is a good supply base there already in the west that you can clearly see. What you do see in organics when we look at it, and this is borne out by studies across Europe, there are slightly younger farmers in organics. So I think the average age of a farmer in Ireland is around between 58 and 60. In organics, it's still in the 50s, but it is slightly younger. And there are more females coming into organics across Europe and in Ireland. So I think on average, it's about 14% head of households across farming, and that'll be up to about 18 in organics. So it is an opportunity there. We need generational renewal in agriculture across Ireland. It's a problem for everybody. And on organic farms, there does seem to be younger farmers and more female farmers, which is very, very positive. So I mentioned the pipeline earlier on. This is something that we just got the information there yesterday. At the moment, we have about 67,000 converted ewes, so breeding ewes that are fully organic. By 2025, there'll be an additional 75,000. So the 2,000 farmers that started farming organically last year, they have 75,000 ewes on the farm. Those that are converting this year and will be fully switched over by 2026 have a further 41,000 ewes. So by 2026, we will have 180,000 ewes. And obviously the lambs that are coming from those. So we will have trebled the number of lambs that are available there. And what's always been said, or what used to be said about organics is, look, we need more factories to come in. And obviously competition is good. But the factories aren't interested without increased supply. And now they will become interested, because within 2 years, we're going to have treble the number of lambs available as we have today. Now, there is leakage at the minute, so not all the lambs that are born organic are going to end up in the organic chain or sold as a premium product. And we want to reduce that as much as possible and make sure that they do to reduce this leakage. But as we get more and more lambs available, you would imagine that more processors will become interested. We need the more finishers to come in to finish the lambs. There's more opportunities coming there. At the moment, sheep prices are at an historic high, so it's great to see. It's great to see for all farmers, organic or conventional, that sheep prices have improved. On the cattle side, you can see there, this table has a lot of information in it, but the top part of it relates to beef. So if we look at the 48 months plus column, like if we concentrate on that and say, we'll take those, there might be some younger cows there, but we'll take those as being the suckler cows that are fully organic. And at the moment, we have 15,500 organic. And we have, I think, 12 to 13,000 cattle killed in the organic sector every year. So if each of those cows is having a calf, you can see that there's leakage there from it. And then what we have coming next year, we have just under 10,000 further cows, and their progeny will be organic. And the following year, we have another just under 4,000 coming through. So you can see that the pipeline there, by 2026, will virtually have doubled the supply of organic cattle. And at that stage, you would say that, look, this is a worthwhile sector for another processor to get involved in. And that's what we want. On the dairy, you can see that we've doubled it. So what we have in there at the minute, just under or a little over 5,000 cows are fully organic. And in 2026, we'll have another 4,900. So we'll virtually have doubled the dairy. Now, dairy is particularly small, and before someone says it, there is an issue around prices and supply. It's very difficult to get liquid milk in dairy, liquid organic milk over the winter, because it's expensive to produce it. And this comes back to needing more tillage farmers, so we're not importing expensive grain from other countries. But you can see there numbers. So our number of ewes have trebled with the land area. Our number of cows, suckler cows, have doubled. And our number of dairy cows have doubled. The payment rates that were introduced, and these have really driven it on, as well as the support and everything else that's happening under the new CAP scheme, the new CAP strategic plan, rates went up by about 56% for the average dry stock farmer. And also what we see, there were always expenses associated with organic. So you must be certified organic to become, or you must be registered with an organic certification body to join the organic farming scheme. and there's an expense associated with that. You have to draw up an animal health plan to join, to be organic. So really that's good practice anyway, and everyone should be doing it. But what you're doing in consultation with your vet is saying, look, these are the issues on my farm, these are the vaccinations I need to use, these are the doses I need to use, and so on. And you'll be doing fecal sampling, and so there are extra costs associated there. So a colleague in Portlaoise, we were talking about this one day, and he had been involved in the REAP scheme, and he suggested you should have a participation payment in organics. And this means in the first year of converting to organic, there's a payment of €2,000, and for every year thereafter, there's a payment of €1,400. So no matter what area you are, you get this payment on top of the per hectare payment, which is very positive. As I said, there are organic control bodies in Ireland. So the Department of Agriculture are the competent authority. The regulations were revised in 2018, and because of COVID, they weren't introduced until 2021. But we implement those, and we have a service level agreement with the Irish Organic Association and the Organic Trust. And we pay those, and farmers pay. So we pay the certification bodies, and farmers also pay them. And they carry out an excellent service certifying everybody. So anybody that's selling organic or that's producing anything that's organic, that's registered organic, there's a 100% inspection rate every year. So everybody is visited by one of the control bodies, and then the department do a 5% inspection as well because of the organic farming scheme. But you can see that controls are very stringent. If somebody uses that green leaf that I had on the first slide, you can be confident that there's a strong set of regulations behind it, and there's a strong set of controls behind it. People often wonder, and we talked about it just before we started there, we have targets in the Climate Action Plan to reduce nitrogen. With the way prices went, and prices back to farmers didn't increase the way input prices increased, but nitrogen use has already fallen, and we're way ahead of the target. I think it was to come down to about 320,000 tonnes, and we're at 280,000 tonnes last year of nitrogen sold. On an organic farm, you're not bringing in any chemical fertilizers, so what do people do? Well, they use legumes. So on the left-hand side there, you see red clover. Red clover is very, very high in protein. For the last couple of years, there's been a red clover scheme. I think it's €300 per hectare. If you want to apply, you put it on your BIS, but that provides high quality, high protein silage for animals, because in organics, like I've said a few times, meal is expensive. So buying concentrates is expensive. So you want to reduce that as much as possible, and using red clover silage is the way to do it. The slide in the middle is multi-species grass. You've probably had people on with presentations solely about red clover and multi-species because there's so much interest in it, and there's so much benefits to it from a biodiversity point of view, from an animal welfare point of view. You can reduce the amount of dosing, for example, with multi-species because of the anthelmintic properties. Your soil changes, so we're talking more about soil health. Because you have roots at different depths, if you dug a small test hole in a field of multi-species, you'll see the roots going to different levels, so they're more drought resistant. You'll see it last summer, we had a mini drought, you could see it, but definitely the summer before, you could see where multi-species was growing, and it was the herbs that were growing in it. So it's becoming more and more popular. And then, of course, we have combi crops, which are peas and barley, or a legume and any cereal. And these are eligible for 50% payment under the protein aid scheme. So the seed for this will be over 100, 110 or 20 euro an acre. So the protein aid really pays for the seed, which is fantastic. So then your costs are ploughing, tilling, sowing and harvesting. And people make this as arable silage, for example, or you can bring it on to combining. And there's more and more information becoming available around it. In April 2022, the Organic Strategy Forum was reconvened, and this is made up of stakeholders from across the sector. So since about 2015, I think there was an organic strategy in place, or shortly after it, and there was an organic forum there around that, but it hadn't continued on. So it's reconvened in April 22 with an independent chair, Pádraig Brennan, formerly of Bord Bia. And on this forum are all the stakeholders that you could think of. So we have the processors, farmers, state, people like myself, Teagasc, the Agricultural Consultants Association, National Organic Training Skillnet, people that need to be there that actually have an impact. And what they're looking at is growing the organic supply, and that's been very successful so far. As I said, that's On the sheep side, it's going to treble. Dairy will double. Beef will double. We're looking at education and knowledge transfer because the numbers of organic farmers. So, for example, in Wexford here, I think there's about 90 organic farmers. So if you're putting on a farm walk, people have to travel. So it's really important that it's freely available and that more courses are provided and that there's more awareness of it. We're looking at market development, so Board B are there as well and play a very important part. And obviously, right from the start, green public procurement has been identified as something that's, something that's needed. So one of the first things the forum pointed out was that there's a very dispersed network of organic farmers. Now that's changing as more farmers come in and more will come in. So we have 5,000 at the minute. So, there are definitely more farmers there and more availability of stock and so on. But the forum wanted a trading hub. So where people could come in and look for stock or look for cereals or look for anything that's for sale, anything that an organic farmer is selling. Not really vegetables, but livestock. So cattle and sheep, there's way more marts than there used to be because this was an issue that there weren't enough organic marts. But this also, I'd encourage everyone to go in and take a look. Or if you're selling organic, the department pay for this, the ads are free. What you do is email us and the ad will go up and that's it. Or you try and put up your ad there and everyone that's organic is registered for free. And it covers everything you can think of. So it's a great resource that's become available. And it's working. It's well used and it's working. I mentioned about Board B. So there's been an awful lot of talk, or there was an awful lot of talk about Board B. And look, what can we do? Like Board B are marketing under Origin Green. Is that not contradictory when we're trying to sell organic and so on? Last year, Organic appointed a new sector manager, which they never had before. It was part of someone's job and he was doing a good job, but it was only part of his job. Now there's someone full-time there and the number of staff have actually increased to 3. And in the last 2 years, Board B have done more than ever before around organic. So last year, because of Brexit, there was money available under the Brexit Adjustment Reserve Fund, and the department applied for and got €1.5 million to go into advertising organics in Ireland. And that was used for the More Organic campaign. It was used for market research, and it was used for a More Organic campaign that ran before Christmas and was very successful. And that's running again at the moment in the lead up to Bloom. And the whole idea is that the market research that Board B did show that I think over a very high percentage, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's well over 3/4 of Irish people actually buy organics. They don't buy it regularly enough. So the idea is, look, you're already buying it, buy a little bit more. Buy a little bit more organic because you really are, like consumers talk about supporting Irish farmers. Buy Irish organic. So see the label that says it's Irish, Board B, quality assured, or a label from the OT or the IOA, the green flag on it, and buy Irish organic. You're supporting Irish farmers. But you can see here is just a sample of the ad that ran. The same thing, good for the soil, good for the soul. So they're very interesting catch lines there. And what they've done as well is they applied for EU funding. Every year, the EU provide funding to market EU product. And Board B were successful, and a marketing campaign is going to kick off in Austria, Sweden, Germany, and Belgium for pasture-fed organic beef and lamb, because these are our major markets, and it's worth 2.7 million over 3 years. And again, this has never happened before. And what to be told on the beef side is that we need the extra beef that we're going to produce because we're supplying into premium markets abroad. And Board B are doing a good job there in supporting it. So I talked earlier about the green public procurement and what that means. So the department, not the department, the state spends a lot of money every year across IT, across buying desks, and you can imagine the amount of money that's spent, but also obviously across food. So that means departments like ourselves or Teagasc or in schools, hospitals and so on. And since the date of this strategy was published, I think it was about a month ago, the target is that 10% of food purchased by the state will be organic. And it also identifies that it should be seasonal where possible. It isn't possible to say buy Irish. Like we're part of the EU, we have free movement across the border. So no country can say buy local. You can't say buy local and you can't say buy the state that you're from. So we cannot say, and the state cannot say buy Irish. But it can say by seasonal product, and that's the way you try and do it. So buy what's seasonal, what's growing, because I think, to be fair, me included, a lot of people don't know what actually is seasonal in Ireland anymore because we import so much of what we're eating. So people need to make an effort, and the state will be making that effort to support organic and to buy seasonal production. So this is just an example of where we've taken a great stride forward. So 2 weeks ago, there was a farm walk on Bill George's farm up in Leash. Before 2023, there were farm walks that the department subsidised along with Teagasc, and they took place all over the country in a different place every year. Now, Teagasc brought forward a very good idea to say, look, we should have a more structured program like we do for beef or dairy or tillage or anything else. And this is the growing organic programs. And what we have here are 11 going to 12 monitor farms where they'll be visited over a period of 4 years. So you're not going back to the same farm every year. And all the financial data and the agronomic data will be made available from that farm, along with monitoring biodiversity, soil carbon, and so on. So the most recent one was up in Leash on the 1st of May. It was very impressive. This farmer here, it's available on the Teagasc website. His average payment last year per litre milk was 59 cents. On the e-profit monitor from Teagasc, it's 44 cents per litre. So there's a premium price there. His costs were kept very low. Obviously, he's not in derogation. You can't be a derogation farmer if you're in organic. The 170 limit applies. But he's running a very efficient system. And it's great for farmers to come along and see. And you might say on a dairy farm, why would a beef or a sheep farmer be going? You're going to see the grassland management there. But if a dairy farmer, and on the grazing platform, he was stocked at 2.5 livestock units per hectare. So if he can produce enough grass there, why can't you? It'll depend on your soil type. But this idea that we can't grow grass or anything like that, these farmers come along to the farm walks, and the next one, and Elaine might correct me, I think it's June the 27th up in Donegal, and it'll be very interesting, and there's sheep and suckler cows and tillage on it. Come along and talk to the farmer and see, can you grow the grass or not? Because this is the biggest fear. But what people sometimes forget is that 2/3 of the stock, so 2/3 of the cattle in Ireland are on 1/3 of the land, or on 1/3 of the farms. So the majority of people in Ireland, the majority of farms are extensively stocked and could well supply the amount of grass they need through clover and legumes. There won't be a problem there. So last year, the department had a call for a fund to promote organics, and these are just two of the projects that came through it. There's a campaign running at the moment called This is Irish Organic. Irish Organic Association were successful. And this is the campaign. So after this, you should Google it, the This is Irish Organic campaign. And the idea is to promote Irish organic product and to get people used to this idea of the green leaf. In other countries, like in Denmark, the green leaf is as recognizable as a Coca-Cola symbol. That's not true here yet, but we're working towards it. The ACA, so I just talked about Teagasc and the growing organic programs. The ACA are also receiving funding as part of this. So they have 2 organic specialists there to support their advisors, and training is held for farmers. And they'll also be holding farm walks throughout the year. So it's not just Teagasc that are receiving support, the private advisors are receiving support as well, and training, and that's really important. Anybody that's looking to do a course in organics or anything around it, NOTS, or National Organic Training Skillnet, are a brilliant organisation that put on a wide variety of courses and bring in experts from both at home and abroad to run these courses in almost anything you can think of. It's really important that people know, if you are organic or if you're considering to become an organic farmer, part of being eligible is that you must do a 25-hour FETAC course. And both Teagasc, Elaine and our colleagues and NOTS provide that course. But people should, just out of interest, should look at the courses available from NOTS, because it's unbelievable what's there. Sometimes, I said it earlier on, the forum looked at what courses are actually available. NOTS are a great resource. SETU, or it used to be Waterford IT, do a Masters in Organics. Wexford are part of that now. They do, they're doing a degree in organics. So there are more and more courses available. And there's also courses available in Tipperary and so on. But it is out there for people that want it, and people do want more and more information. It was also said that, look, there's no research on organics in Ireland. So that was true. For a number of years, there was an organic farm here in Wexford in Johnstown Castle, and during the crash, that closed. You know, resources were allocated elsewhere. But there was a call last year, and a successful project on it was the Growing Resilient Organic Farming Systems. And there's 900,000 from the department and 400,000 from Teagasc. Teagasc are working with UCD, or will be working with UCD. And this will look at producing economic figures on beef and sheep farms and best practice on beef and sheep farms and what should be your finishing diet. So I mentioned earlier about red clover. this will actually, there'll be research results there, but it's a really important step to have organic research again in Ireland. Just lately, there was a research call. So this is a different type of research. The one I talked about earlier would be for larger projects. This is a smaller one, maybe desk studies over the course of a year and so on. And we've been asked several times, look, what will be the impact of meeting the target here of 10% by 2030, or the EU 25% target? Or what always gets brought up is, God, we won't have enough food. We need to produce enough food. And like I said earlier, we throw out a third of what we produce. We produce 10% of greenhouse gases in the world annually from wasted food. So we have plenty of food, but we're not distributing it properly, and we're not eating quality food. But anyway, as part of this call, there's an assessment of what it will mean for the environment, for economics, for agriculture, of meeting the 10% target by 2030, or of meeting the EU target at a later time of 25% organic. That's topic 12. And then topic 16. I said earlier, we have no organic feed mill in Ireland, which is a real gap, because we need that. I think we get more organic tillage farmers if we had a feed mill. We need an organic feed mill, and this study will look at what's the feasibility of that. So people know that they're out there. This has been circulated to all the researchers, and the closing date, I think, is around the 6th of June. So I mentioned the EU Green Claims Directive. So according to the EU, 75% of products sold across Europe make an environmental claim, and 50% of those are false. So they voted just in March to agree on this in the Parliament, and within 2 years, usually, this will be in place. And what it will mean is that if you make a claim, it'll have to be backed up by an international standard. Organics is already there. And this will help organics because we'll stop seeing all these labels unless they're backed up by scientific data and by monitoring that say good for this or good for that. It's already accepted that organics is certified and is of a high standard, and is studies there show, for example, across Europe, there's a metadata study in Sweden that shows organics sees, I think it's between 25 or 40% improvement in biodiversity on farms, particularly on larger farms, because of the change in practice. We've all read and been reading, and it's constant every week, about water quality in Ireland. Our derogation, is it going to stay or go? What's going to happen? We do know that people are under pressure. Same thing with pesticides being reduced. So you can see that the guiding here is towards things that are certified, controlled, and are actually positive for the environment. So this green claims will be good for organics. And just what I want to finish up with is that organics fits in. Food Vision 2030 is our agri-food strategy. Organics is identified and fits into it as a real diversification option for farmers. And that's what it is. Sometimes people get upset. You're saying I'm not doing this and not doing that. Like, I'm doing everything I can for the environment. I'm an ordinary farmer. I've cut back on my fertilizer. That's fine. Organics is just a diversification option. It suits some farmers. It doesn't suit others. But there are things that can be learned from organic farmers. And likewise, organic farmers can learn from conventional farmers. And you'd like to see a better flow of information. And that's what I think is happening now. There's a better flow, better communication, better understanding. And it's more acceptable, which is terrible to say that it wasn't acceptable in the past, but it's just another form of farming, and that's the way it should be seen. The reason I put up this slide is that a new strategy is being developed at the moment. So the old organic strategy expires this year. So a new strategy is being developed, and that will be published later on in the year. Finally, just to finish again, that's the organic leaf, and that's our contact details here in Johnstown Castle. If there's any way we can help, we would like to. For anybody in agriculture, their email address, so my email address is jack.nolan@agriculture.gov.ie if you want to contact me directly, or 086 834 0038. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. And there's definitely no question of your commitment to the sector and your willingness to support everybody trying to achieve these goals. So we appreciate that. Just maybe to give you a break there for a moment, Jack, you've been talking flat out. Elaine, I mean, there's been a huge amount of activity there from a Teagasc perspective in terms of knowledge transfer activities. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it along to the farm walk there and done Leavy's in Tuam during the week, but there's a significant amount of resources available to people who are already organic or considering organic. Maybe could you talk us around those a little bit?
Yeah, I'd like to take on from what Jack said, that the momentum is really growing, and Teagasc has certainly responded to that. We were only a team of 2 advisors. We now have a team of 10 of us in total. We have 6 regional advisors located in the offices in the advisory regions around the country. So we have the Growing Organics program that Jack flagged there. With our next walk, as he correctly said, we're heading to Donegal in June, the 27th of June, and then we're heading to Carlow in July and Longford in September. So there are 4 big national walks. And packaged in within those, then we would have those 6 regional advisors would be doing a number of regional walks. As you said, we had one in Tuam last week, and we're heading up to Cavan Monaghan direction in the second week in June. So we have that. Also, we have knowledge transfer, and that's where we are at in relation to discussion groups. All our regional advisors have a number of organic discussion groups that have started earlier in the year. And we also provide the Organic Farming Principles course that all organic farming scheme participants, are those who are, even before they even go in, as Jack said, is a very good idea to do it. We do a number of those are going on throughout the year. So we're busy but enjoying it all, and the momentum is still there. So we're carrying on with that momentum and answering all queries that we can.
Yeah, no, I hear great things about that course, and it's a really interesting course. Even if you don't decide to go into organics immediately.
Oh, absolutely. I would have people that would have done it maybe 5 years ago and are only moving in now. So it's a good 20. I know it might be only 25 hours, but most of the feedback we get, it gives a very good overview of those principles. So it gets people's.
And you're going to have a good size exhibit at the Grange Open Day, I believe, in County Meath on the 26th of June.
26th of June, yes, Grange Beef Open Day. We are in the advisory and opportunity section. So we have hopefully they'll grow now. So hopefully I'm not preempting fate. We only got down the hands and knees and sowed them this week, but we have a trial plot, as Jack alluded there to. There's so much grain being brought in, imported in, and we're looking at the alternative sources of protein. So we're looking at, he mentioned there, combination crops, which is what a combination crop is: a cereal and a pea. So we have a number of those on trial within a plot to show people what they can grow in that space. So hopefully they'll grow and
Thanks,
be there
Elaine.
for June.
And I'm not sure if I properly introduced you at the start, Elaine. You're organic specialist in Teagasc, based in Mullingar.
Yes.
So it's good for people to be
around
aware
a long time, so that's all right. No.
Well, I'm sure most people who are in the sector know you at this stage. Jack, there is you look, obviously we have this strategy to increase the amount of organic land, or land that's farmed organically. There have been some, I suppose, criticisms around this strategy at a European level, to say, will this actually feed Europe? I heard a quote there from at the Agricultural Science Association conference last year, where some figures were done to say that this European Green Deal, with the targeted reductions in fertilizers, would result in a 15% reduction in the amount of food produced within Europe. Where do you think organics fits within that? Is it accepted that it's not the solution for all farming, or what's your view on that?
Jeannie, is definitely not the solution for all farmers, Mark. It's an option there for some. Like, I suppose, if I didn't make it clear, there's an awful lot of farmers doing an awful lot of good work in Ireland in relation to water quality, biodiversity, and so on. This is simply an option. I did emphasize a couple of times, 30% of the food we produce is thrown in the bin, one way or another. We have problems with obesity. On the flip side, we have problems with starvation. So I'd say it's not the production of food, but the distribution of it, the quality of food that we produce. Organics the ambition isn't to feed the world. The ambition is to take a small percentage and say, look, there's an alternative way here. I can change my diet. I can look at what I'm doing. I can look at what I'm eating. I could also, of course, get up and walk a little bit and get fit and reduce my health problems that way. We have all these things. The department are funding more and more things around mental health and physical health for farmers, the Engage and the On Farm Ground program, because it's recognised as such a problem. If we went to a mart now after this, we'd see older farmers and we'd see a lot of them when they stand up taking a couple of minutes to loosen up and get them going. So we have real problems there. Organics isn't going to take over the world, but say we have 1/3 of farmers producing 2/3 of the livestock. What about the other 2/3 of farmers? Why aren't they organic? Like, is there some psychological barrier there, or what is it? Or is it a principle that I won't do it? Or are they making that much money that they don't want to go organic? Or is there something they could change that'd bring them in? I don't know. We go out and meet people. We're open to conversations. What I'm interested in is a viable income for farmers. So if farmers are happy with what they're at and have a decent quality of life, that's fine. What we're putting on the table to them is an alternative and saying, look, this is something here. A lot of people now, when you meet them, they're stressed about they can't get labour, high input prices. They're not getting a decent price. Like, even if you look at the price of grain this week, I think it's gone up €6 a tonne, but it's less than €200 a tonne, and grain being sold in the last week. And the grain area, the tillage area in Ireland is falling. So I just see this as an alternative. I don't, I'll talk about morals and principles and everything, but from a farmer's point of view, it's an alternative here, and why not consider it?
No, that's a fair point. And look, I think that 10% target reflects that level of ambition, that you're not trying to.
But we will take more. Like, there's no limit. Like 10% is a target, but why don't we aim for more? Imagine the benefit to Ireland if we went 100% organic. Imagine the marketing there that Board Fáilte could do, or Fáilte Ireland, they're called now. Like, we bring in about 14 billion a year in tourism. Imagine marketing an organic island across the world. Just think about it. Now, someone out there is already after putting somewhere, he's mad. You can't say that. Why can't you say it? Like, when we were changing our milk production system, we doubled it nearly. We went from 5 up to 8 billion litres. Why can't we look to the future and say by 2050, could Ireland be organic? It's a question we should be asking anyway.
Absolutely. Well, look, it's fantastic that the will is there from the department and from the political system as well, that determination is there. So I mean, look, you're obviously confident confident and hopeful that 10% will be achieved or even exceeded. Just in terms of that you talked about the willingness to pay for food, and I heard a quote from that same conference I referenced earlier on that.
I'm sorry you went to that conference.
It was a very good conference, very thought-provoking. But one of the speakers made a very good point. He said, never have people cared so much about what they eat, but know so little about what they eat, and that distance between the farm to fork. And I'm just interested around that people that willingness to pay.
That's a really, really interesting point, because when I put up about education there as part of the forum's remit, it's not just education in that we think about getting a qualification. It's actually explaining to people, look, if you buy cheap food and all these 3-for-1 or 2-for-1 offers and you throw out half it, this is the impact of it. This is what you're doing. So it's education so that the consumer understands. If you feed cheap food to a child, the child is obviously going to have, there's going to be a physical impact from that, mentally and physically. So I agree, but like, people are welcome to come to these organic farm walks and talk to people, or go to other farm walks and talk to farmers there and see what they're eating and see what they're doing. But I think there is a market there for it, and there is a demand for it. We just need to stop and think a little bit. But the consumer is not spending enough on food. What we spent 30 years ago was double what we spend today. And yet people can afford more sun holidays, more trips abroad for surgery on hair and things like that. And I need it myself. But you know what I mean? So we need to prioritize food more than we do.
No, I agree with you there. It's when it comes down to the decisions when you're in the supermarket. And that's where you have competing priorities. Elaine, lots of questions coming in here. We better get to the questions before we run out of time.
Absolutely, Mark. I suppose a lot of comments coming in to say great presentation, Jack, and as Mark alluded to there, your passion for the subject. is very well complemented. As well, maybe just the first question when you were talking about the scheme and support, when would you expect that the organic farming scheme will be opening for anybody listening that might be interested, that's going to maybe make the move?
On Bill George's farm walk on the 1st of May, Minister Hackett said she expects it to open in the autumn. So, that's the most up-to-date information we have. Minister expects it to open in the autumn. So I'd encourage people to go and do the 25-hour course, go to a farm walk, get yourself set up, and don't come in just for the money. Obviously money is a driver, but be aware of what you're going to do, because it always comes up about, say, I have rushes or I have docks and what can I do? Like lime the land. You can use lime there. There's no issue. Get the land fertile if you need to. But get yourself ready and get yourself informed. But autumn of this year, Elaine.
Yeah, you actually answered a couple of questions there. People were wondering about rush control and all the rest and weed control. So what you would advise there?
Agroforestry is another one. You can get paid for agroforestry and organics on the same land. And there's a farm up there in Sligo, Clive Bright, Rare Room and Air. And he used it very successfully, and he gives lovely presentations around it the way, like, you can still have your stock around the trees and the forestry will actually soak up the water, and you'll get paid for both agroforestry and organics on the same land.
Okay, a few questions here, Jack, on the standards in relation to, can you clarify the situation where an organic farmer without livestock takes in dairy cows? Is this allowed? So somebody that's bringing in stock for the first time onto an organic farm.
He shouldn't be, or she shouldn't be. So there's an allowance in the regulation that says you can take in stock for, we've said 180 days each year, but that stock should be coming from land farmed either in an agri-environmental way or another, nature-friendly way, and dairy farmers wouldn't be coming in under that. So no, you can't take in dairy cows. The stock and rate requirement changed from 0.5 livestock unit per hectare in the last scheme to 0.1 now. And this goes back to Mark's point about having an area target. We do want production, and we are going to double and treble production. So it's not too much to ask to meet a stock and rate requirement to 0.1. And a lot of farmers are well above that in organics as well.
And has there been a change to the standards not to now allow the rearing organic calves on milk replacer?
No, there's no change. It was there all the time. And if you can get organic milk replacer, but the economics of this would be very interesting. Like if you can find an organic milk replacer with the green flag on it, that's certified by the IOA or the OT, you can use it. But I'd imagine that's very, very expensive.
Yeah.
But you can do it.
So it's not a requirement.
No, you can do it. But the what you want first is fed from maternal milk. But you can, but it's very, very expensive. But it says in the regulation, I can't remember the exact wording, Mark, but the most desirable thing is fed on the maternal milk.
Yes.
But it does say if you are in certain circumstances, you can use it as long as it's not from a plant-based origin. But all that is in the regulation.
You mentioned there, you were talking there about the protein scheme payment with the combination crop seed mixes. Just a comment here that most of those seed mixes are about 40% pea and 60% cereal. Was that thought about when the 50% protein seed requirement, and is it something that could be reviewed?
I wouldn't, definitely wasn't thought about, I'd imagine.
No.
Although it was brought in, but I'd say it wasn't thought about. And yeah, we will definitely raise it. I didn't know it was a problem for people, to be honest. I thought a lot of people were qualifying for the scheme, and I hope they are. And we want to see more combi crops and more native grain. So yeah, I'll bring it up with the relevant division. Guarantee you there'll be no change for this year because the terms and conditions are published, but I'll see.
Something that can be looked at. Okay, yeah. And somebody that's obviously in organics and was wondering when, when those entering, when will the balance that's outstanding?
The end of the month. So our target is the end of the month, and I'm sorry, our target was earlier on the year, but between different things, but the end of this month, so within the next 3 weeks.
Okay, a couple of questions, Jack, there around the whole area of animal health and welfare, and I suppose in relation to animal health and welfare, what are kind of the things to consider as regards animal health and welfare when you convert to organics?
I'd say a lot of farmers will tell you themselves, so when you talk to them, look, the major concern on the farm, they'd spend money on the animals first before themselves nearly, like farmers themselves, just to switch back to physically and mentally, are in a very poor place and need to look after themselves. So don't want to be talking doom and gloom, but people do need to be conscious of the pressures that are on them this year between weather, finance, everything else, and talk to someone if you need it. From an animal health point of view, so you talk to your vet, what problems have I on my farm? What vaccinations do I need to use? And I'm going to continue to use those on a regular basis because animal health is a key priority. It's a key priority. In Germany, they're introducing a new animal welfare standard called Haltungsform, and it's going from 1 to 4, and organics rates as 1. So it's way up there. If you're going to dose, take fecal samples. You know, if you're going to use antibiotics, talk to the vet. There are rules around how often you can use antibiotics, but basically it's what you'll be doing anyway. If you're grazing animals, you'll use a leader-follower system and everything you can.
Yeah, and I suppose a comment as well that from what I would see from farmers, animal health and welfare, going organic has no negative impact in any way in either animal health or welfare. Organic grain there, Jack, as regards recommended varieties, do you see, is there any plan maybe to look at some trial plots or research in relation to this whole area of recommended varieties?
There are trial plots. Sorry, could I just go back to animal welfare? Like I'd like to emphasize, animal welfare in organics is key and it's a priority. And in Germany, they've put it at the highest possible class. So please don't anyone think that animal welfare is an issue in organics, because it's not. There are trial plots. There are 3 different plots around Ireland. There's one in Wexford, one in Laois, one down in Cork. And also last year, Teagasc, Martin Burke there did trials on certain additives that were really interesting and are freely available, because a lot of material is being marketed to farmers about it'll do this and do that. And it's good to do a test on it, even if it's only for 1 year. But there are trials there and the results are available from Back Weston every year on varieties.
Okay, I suppose another comment here, excellent presentation. The whole area of marketing of organic food, the comment is it needs to be more informative and that this consumer don't really know what they're looking for. So I presume what would you comment on that, Jack?
Yeah, well, I suppose the idea of the green flag and promoting it and Board B, I don't know if you heard the Board B ad there. It's on radio and social media around more organic. So there's more and more around it, but you do need to look for it. When we go to trade, the department goes to trade shows like the one in Germany there, you know, the one in Biofac.
Biofac.
And we went to Paris last year to Nat Expo. Everybody understands organic and loves it, you know, and you go to the shops across Europe and it's well displayed. That hasn't happened here yet. And I'd say the reason is because if you look at the scene behind you, across Europe, they don't have the grassland that we have. They don't have animals out. And people think we're organic already. You know, the image of Ireland is high animal, which is true from we have very high standards and farmers are doing a lot of good work, but organics is another step. And we are doing more and more about it. There was a really interesting Antashka project last year, A Legacy for Life, where they looked at the barriers to organics. And they also sent out small booklets, information booklets to national schools about organic farming to try and explain what it is. Yeah. Because this will also do away with a lot of the negativity that certain farmers feel when you discuss organics, because they think you're criticizing them when you're not. You're just saying, here's something else you could try.
Yeah.
Jack, there was a question here in relation to, I suppose, how we communicate the benefits of organic food or farming systems to consumers in terms of, the positive effects on the environment, water quality, biodiversity. A comment in here from a farmer that maybe we're not articulating that clearly enough to people that when they do buy organic, that it has a reduced impact on the environment. I know it's an obvious thing to say, but
I suppose the policy call we talked about earlier on, Mark, there, that's going to look at the impact. Like when we have the results of that, they'll be made freely available. But I suppose Board B are there doing that, and there's a lot of direct sales in organics and one-to-one. Now that's another skill set and everything, but it is difficult. And I think, to be honest, like in Ireland, we're very closely related to agriculture. Go to the UK, they haven't a notion where the food comes from. Like I was in an English shop and they had a cow there and you pressed a button and it mooed because people didn't know where the milk came from. So we're lucky, but yeah, we could always do more. And home economics could be a core subject for every child in Ireland. It'd be brilliant that people understood not just where food comes from, but the impact of it on them. What difference a healthy diet makes, particularly now with sport and so on, that you need to eat right. And we're all much more conscious. We're living longer. There's no good living longer if you don't have a quality of life. And that all comes from what you eat. So definitely more could be done.
Well, one of my pet topics is that we should be teaching children how to feed themselves. It should almost be a mandatory part of the secondary curriculum. But look, I won't be using this platform to to sell my wares. But look, there are lots of questions still coming in. We've probably time for one or two more, Elaine.
Yeah, just oh no, sorry, I'm after losing the one I had. Yeah. Yes, somebody wants you to put on your former nitrates hat, Jack. And do you think organic farming will, first of all, have a positive impact on national nitrate use? And secondly, will there be enough uptake to significantly reduce that nitrate impacts?
So half the fertilizer is used on dairy farms. So 20% of the farms are dairy or less, and they're using half the fertilizer. And we haven't seen dairy farmers coming in yet because the economics doesn't pay. Organics will have an impact. It definitely does. It's 0.1 of a megaton per 100,000 hectares. From a climate point of view, the average farmer in Ireland, suckler, is using about 50 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. So yeah, there's definitely a benefit there. Definitely a benefit. On the derogation side, who knows what's going to happen with the Dutch losing theirs, the Danes not applying. Well, it's not my job anymore, which is a great relief.
Okay. And just one great presentation. I just want to know, what is the average size in hectares of the organic farm?
45 hectares, and the average payment is €12,000. So
Okay.
we're seeing, larger farms maybe than the average, because I think the average farm size in Ireland is 36 hectares or 33, so slightly larger farms. We would like to see more mixed farms because, like, your question about combi crop, we want people to produce grain where possible. We want it produced in Ireland. And as part of that policy call, what will be looked at is what is the ideal scenario. So how much tillage area would we need to stop imports? Because that's the ideal scenario, that we have a closed system within Ireland. That's where we'd like to get to, that we're producing enough grain, reduce the grain fed, feed the red clover, use your multi-species white clover. But if you do need it, buy Irish grain. That's what we want.
Okay. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, Jack. Just based on that last comment there, I think there's huge opportunities for greater cooperation between dry stock or livestock and tillage farmers, and particularly within the organic sector. So I know there's lots of moves around that area, and we have another shameless plug here from our colleague Gary Fisher up in Donegal to remind everybody that they'll be welcoming people on the Thursday, the 27th of June at 2 p.m. on John Hamilton's farm in St. Johnston, County Donegal. And he says the sun shines in Donegal too. So just to remind us that. So hopefully, Gary, you can have a good sunny day organised for us that day. So thanks again, Jack. Really appreciate you coming in and joining us today. Elaine, your expertise there on the organics is always really important for these types of sessions that we're having. And I've circulated there the link to the Teagasc Organic website. If anyone has any further questions, a huge amount of resources there within the Teagasc Organics section, videos available, and reviews of different farm walks. So I think it's an excellent place to start if you're interested. So in terms of next week, we're going to be joined to discuss the Inish Own Uplands EIP. Donegal is getting a good mention today. So it's a whole farm approach to sustainable farming. And we're going to be joined by John Doherty, who's the project manager, and Henry O'Donnell, who's the former project manager there. So do join us next Friday at 9:30. You've been listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, the weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Don't forget to join us live every Friday morning for our latest webinar. For more, visit teagasc.ie. And you can also rate, review, and subscribe to the Signpost Series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Mark Gibson, and thanks for listening.